Do you know this man? Yes? Raise your hand if you do. Good. Okay, before he became famous for leaking dirty NSA secrets, Edward Snowden was just like you, me. He had a normal, almost normal 9-to-5 job, and he was just a Mr. Nobody. Nobody today, however, can contest that what he did had a profound impact on the way we view governments and the way governments react to our request for more transparency. Yet what is interesting is what he says about this. He says, I don't see myself as a hero because what I did was self-interested. I don't want to live in a world where there's no privacy and where there's no room for intellectual exploration and creativity. So basically, Edward is an anti-hero. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people out there who are anti-heroes. I believe that there are common traits in a generation today that is not a generation in the traditional sociological sense. And I call them Generation E, or Gen E in short. This is a generation that was born with the rise of electronic devices, but its influence extends far beyond the reach of internet geeks and science nerds. So let's unroll together the virtual DNA of Generation E and let's see what they have in common. The first personality trait is that they're highly educated. And not just educated in the number and level of their diplomas, but also highly educated. They're very tech savvy. And what does this mean in practice? It means that these people continue to educate themselves on a daily basis, regularly. And it's actually a kind of virtuous circle. The more educated you are, the more educated you actually want to be. These are user demographics from MOOCs, massive online open courses. And you can see that the average age of participants is 28. 2/3 of them already have a bachelor's degree or higher. And the majority of them already work. So we're not talking about standard students. We're really talking about young professionals that want to learn more. So here we have it. Highly educated and continuously educated people. The second personality trait is that they're networked. And not in the traditional sense of, oh, I'm networked, I know people, or I'm in a lot of groups. It's a different kind of connectivity. It's a connectivity that bridges two different bridges. One, geographical barriers. So these are people that can connect in a very intuitive and natural way to people across the world who they've never met, who they've never heard about, but suddenly together they can chat, they can share, they can start collaborating and working. Here, of course, crowdsourcing platforms have played a big role. Wikipedia is a good example. The other aspect of these new networked people is that they can also bridge silos between networks. These are people who can bring together people from networks that would never talk to each other in the past. So what does this look like in practice? If you look at a sociograph, so a sociograph is a visual representation of a social network, you can basically see that a traditional sociograph, just like the one you have on behind me, is relatively stable drawing, where you can see that networks kind of overlap. But if you look at the network of a Generation E representatives, you can see that that person forms a hub that connects networks which seemingly have nothing or very little in common. Now, if you superpose to the first diagram, the diagram that shows how neurons connect in the brain, you can see a pattern here. This uses a concept called the small worlds network. And this concept is used both to display how brain cells connect, but also to display how people connect. Wouldn't it be fascinating if science would show us that there are common patterns in the way we build networks between people and the way our brain cells connect? And what would this mean for Generation E? I'm really curious. The third characteristic is that they're energetic, but not just energetic. I mean, we're talking here bordering on the hyperactive, but in a positive sense. These are people that we call slashers. They have a job title slash another job title slash another job title slash another job title slash another job title. They're typically the people who have a hard time explaining to their mom or their grandparents what they do on an everyday basis. Yet, they managed to look healthy and happy. How did they do it? Just like Cheryl. Cheryl is a typical example of a happy and healthy, energetic person. She's a Generation E representative. She's in her 40s. So forget about this idea that Generation Es are only millennials. That's not true. Cheryl is a mother of 4 fantastic kids. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's created several companies. She's also created nonprofits. She's a firm believer that girls can make it big in ICT and science. And she's defending her idea very regularly, including at TEDxTalks. She's a role model, basically. And she's a fantastic friend. And when I think of her, I think of her like that. Another characteristic is that I'm thinking about environmentally conscious. And here, I have to admit, millennials are kind of driving that trend. And when you ask millennials about climate change or energy, renewable energies, yes, they would have a tendency to be more in favor of these kind of, admitting that climate change is a reality and being favorable to more renewable energy sources. However, and it's not just your standard 16-year-old, there are young people who take this even further. Elif is a good example. Most of you knew Edward Snowden, but Elif might not be familiar to you, at least not her face, but maybe her achievements are. Elif Bilgin is a 16-year-old high school student from Turkey, and she had this crazy idea of using banana peels to replace old school petroleum-based plastics. Why not? And she has a quite unique life philosophy for a 16-year-old. She basically says, I've started the process of changing the world, which makes me feel like a winner already. I think that's quite amazing. On the one hand, we have Edward the anti-hero, and on the other hand, we have 16-year-old Elif, who is already a winner and a change maker. So here we go. Examples of Generation E. So what do they have in common? Let's sum up. They're green, they're energy-driven, they're networked, and they're educated. They're Gen E. There's 2 more personality traits that they display. The first one is that they're open to change. And when I say open to change, I don't just mean open to change. I mean, these are people who breathe change, they live change, they're change makers. Change is their natural habitat. And of course, we can all think of examples. And when you had the question today of, are you ready for change? Gen E's, don't even connect with that question. The real question is the world ready for Gen E? The last personality trait is that Gen Es are organization or institution averse. They just hate organizations. Don't you all hate organizations? Organized stuff? Well, Gen Es hate organized stuff. And in particular, just like Edward Snowden, but also other people you can think about, Julian Assange, Rikin Patel, founder of Avaz, the online petitioning platform, they just don't trust traditional structures of power. These are people who can leverage the wisdom of crowds. When they hear crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, co-creation, it's their natural language. They don't need translation. I have a confession to make. The second sociograph you saw was actually mine. Yes. I'm Generation E. But I'm sure I'm not the only one. And just like Cheryl, Elif, and Edward, I believe we can all be superheroes every day, tomorrow. Are you ready? Thank you.